then.
Going back to when you first came to the village, you said that it was a very friendly, small community. What else do you remember about it then?
I remember thinking, when I had been here about 25 years, and old Mrs. Griffin, who must have been the oldest lady in the village, who lived in those little cottages opposite the Checkers, called me by my Christian name, and I thought, I'm in. I've arrived. It was that sort of feeling, you know, you had to work your passage. You couldn't just come and that was it. But because there were so many youngsters, young families, and a lot of the young in the council houses were young marrieds whose parents were also in the village, which of course you don't get now because nobody can afford to accommodate their youngsters in the village. So we all knew each other, we literally did.
Well, I know you were a character in the village.
That sounds bad.
It's not, it's lovely because you were known to be cycling around and always busy and helping out with the church and with all the other organisations.
I was known on my bicycle as a village bag lady because I'd always got carrier bags on either side of the handlebars. And I miss my bicycle dreadfully, I really do.
I'm sure you do.
But, yes, and I have had a lot to do with the church, and not so much when the children were little, but, I suppose for the last 30-odd years I have done a lot with it in and around the church.
And with the flowers in the church, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I did those, yeah. With Gladys. Gladys had her niche, which no one was allowed to touch. That was her spot.
This is Gladys Axton.
That's Gladys Axton, yes.
And Mrs. Forrest, you were...
Yes, Mrs.
well.
Forrest, we did know well. Now, she lived where Anne Webley and the other houses, big houses now are.
So that's Main Street.
That's right. So it was I thought it was a Nissen hut, but the Coxes had told me, no, it was a tin hut. And it was originally built for one of the ex-headmasters at the old school who retired and had nowhere to live. So they got him a hut. But when I remember it, it was more like a Nissen hut, but it was beautifully done. And Fred Forrest, who was a post office engineer, his hobby was building big steam trains, engines you could sit on. So he and my husband spent, every Monday, they were down the bottom tinkering with their engines, and Mrs. Forrest and I were working the village over in her part. And she was definitely a character. And she used to tell me that the WI, now I had no idea that WI in those days was so ambitious. I mean, when I joined, reluctantly, it was beginning to fail. The younger people didn't want to come. They were starting to work, maybe, and it was an afternoon session. The old people didn't want it changed. Sorry, I'm not too far away. Didn't want it changed to an evening session. And, everybody got older and didn't particularly want to do things like amateur dramatics and skiffle groups and the things that Mrs. Forrest told me about. So that must have been fun at that day. So that must have been post-war into the 50s, maybe. The other thing I was going to tell you about, and I keep getting myself diverted, was when we first came, the first May Day we were here, 1st of May, there were a gang of little boys and girls knocking at the back door, holding bunches of flowers, and they sang a song which I can't, something like the 1st of May's Garland Day, and they were obviously, they wanted a bit of a handout. So that was great. And then the school had a May Day procession. I can remember one, it was while Mark, so it must have been 60s, one May Day, I'd gone to Missington Abbey on a playgroup course, and Gerard was in charge of being a dad, on the spot, and it snowed on them. They'd got this May Day. It did. Snowed. Absolutely. It snowed in Great Missington on their tulip tree, So we're better off now, aren't we? Global warming or not global warming.
Well, we must say for the listeners that the temperatures are in the double figures. It's really
Exactly.
hot.
It's lovely. It really is nice. So, and then in the summer, when the church had their fete, and I think that was usually June because it was a rose time, and they had a rose queen on a float. And I can't think of her name. The girl who does the florist shop in Wendover.
Eileen.
That's right, Eileen was Rose Queen one year, I remember, yeah. Very, very pretty, very attractive, you know. And we were given to fancy dress competitions and children's sports days. The things you have in a village that, no, they're too busy with their PlayStations.
I remember the fun run that was organised
Oh,
in
yeah.
the village.
Yeah, I remember that well. I went on my bicycle as Super Gran, like the woman on the telly, with a tam o' shanter.
I have a photograph.
Have you really? So have I somewhere. That was good. That was a ecumenical sort of thing. The chapel were very keen. They all joined in.
Yes.
There were things at each venue.
Yes, I think we should explain a little bit about it, that the whole village was involved in this fun run.
Yeah, what was it? I can't remember that much about it now.
Well, I remember that, as you said,
We
the
went to the
chapel-
pubs collecting.
Yes, the
I remember.
pubs and the chapels, and everybody was involved.
Mm.
And there were marshals all around the
That's
village looking
right,
after
yes.
the children.
That's right. And this was before Weston Turville erupted into Open Gardens Day, which is every 3 years, is it again? Still?
It is every 3 years.
Which was another thing when, you know, the policemen were there, you had marshals, and it was really good though, because it was great fun. I remember we went down to, Cathy and I, because we were running the youth club at that time, so we went down to the Five Bells in our gear. Forget what she was. I know we had a French waitress in very high heels trying to walk over milk carton. Milk crates in her high heels, down by the brook.
Yes, there were special obstacles, weren't
That's
there?
right,
around
yeah.
the course.
That's right, and you were supposed to do all these. And when we went to the Five Bells, we had to eat a plate full of cold baked beans with a cocktail stick. Sorry. So that was a real good day, and it was a nice day. So
was
it
a
could
hot
have been,
day.
was it?
Yes.
So that, you see, the fun things we did. I mean, even when we were raising money for the hospice and things like that, and the fighting against the third airport, it was always a fun thing that we all enjoyed. It was made a pleasure.
I think that might have been for the hospice. I might be wrong.
What?
The fun day, the run.
I would have thought that was... No, I think it was the church.
You
wasn't
think it was the church?
I think that was before the hospice was built, because Lindsay Smith was very much into the hospice, and I don't think the glebe and down there was built then.